Well, let me now introduce my panel, and of course we've also got stakeholders here with us in the audience, and we'll be talking to them shortly. But joining me from my immediate right, we have Harun Hassan, the Executive Director of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities. Bwana Hassan, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Wahiga.
Right next to him is Jacinta Mwende. She is the Principal Social Development Officer. Jacinta, welcome.
Thank you, Wahiga.
And we are also joined by Peter Ombasa, Assistant Director, Children's Services. On Ombasa, we're glad to have you joining us here today.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening to you too. And of course to our audience, welcome to the program, and those who are watching us from around the country and virtually around the world as well. Remember, you can weigh in. 22422 is that SMS line, and the hashtag is Newsnight. I'll be reading your questions and your comments a bit later on in the program. But Bwana Ombasa, I want to start with you. In case anyone missed the definitions and is still a little bit unclear about this universal child benefits from that feature that Martin Munene did, what exactly is UCB?
Thank you so much, Wahiga, and allow me to be as explicit as possible so that all the audience and all the members of the public can be able then to understand what UCB is. But first things first, I want first to welcome you and the entire congregation to what we intend to have in the month of March. We intend to have the Social Protection Conference starting from 27th all the way to 31st, a very exciting conference for everybody to attend. Let me come then to the Universal Child Benefit Program. But the biggest things we would need to ask ourselves, how did it come to being? There's enormous statistics and data that gave us that direction. I want to start with the cost of anger reports. It is a report that was commissioned by the African Union and published by the Ministry of Health on 14th February 2019. And among the data that came out, very staggering data, whereby they indicated that 19.2% of children die before the fifth birthday related to undernutrition. That same report also indicated that at least 90.4% of episodes in hospital, close to around around 2.1 million children, go to hospital because of undernutrition. What does that mean to the budget of health? That means that around 13.1 billion shillings is used to treat these children. Therefore, in terms of expenditure on that particular budget, close to about 70.1% goes to treat children because of either undernutrition or malnutrition for that matter. However, that doesn't end on that note. The Kenya Health Demographic Survey report also documents very staggering information and data, and some of which that I want to share with you. Out of a total of 7.2 million children in 2014 that the survey did, around 1.9 million, or 26%, are stunted. So 1 in every 4, generally 1 in every 4, because 26% is about a quarter, are stunted. Very staggering.
Very worrying statistics.
Then also 4% of it, they are wasted. And of course, 11% are underweight. Then what does this mean to the overall GDP of the country, economic-wise? We are losing close to around 373.9 billion yearly. That's according to the report. But then, the report doesn't end there. There is a way for us to mitigate. The Division of Nutrition and Dietetics, in their National Action Plan from 2018 to 2022, had several key results areas. And I want to specifically touch on key results area number 14, which recommended a raft of information. And among them is nutrition is a social protection should ideally be promoted in every sphere of life. That then adds some strategies of how to intervene. Looking at all those scenarios, there was need for us as government to think, how then can we intervene? The only way to intervene is by 3 ways. Either incorporate explicit nutrition objectives in our programming, or secondary, mobilize resources for that purpose. And of course, thirdly, integrate nutrition education in promotion of the SP programming. That then gave us an idea, how then can we intervene at the 1,000 days so that we reduce the cost to the economy. Therefore, universal child benefit.
That's where it came into play. Very important statistics. It helps to actually set the stage for the discussion that we are jumping into. And I know Bwana Harun Hassan and Jacinta Mwende will have some thoughts on this that I'll be coming to them shortly for. But they say the proof of is it the cooking or the food is in the eating? And we want to understand from some of the beneficiaries who've had a chance to interact with this program, what it has meant for them, for their lives, for their families, and so forth. And I think we're joined by Jacinta Ndungi, who's here with us, just to talk a little bit about some of the benefits, some of the services that she has received and her family from the Universal Child Benefits Program since she first enrolled. Bwana Jacinta, unaweza endelea tafadhali, tueleze kuhusu how USB has changed your life.
My name is Jacinta Ndungi. I'm from Kajiado County. I'm a mother of 3. I'm a community child protection volunteer and a beneficiary of Universal Child Benefit. Being a beneficiary of Universal Child Benefit, I'm happy to be with you here because it is through UCB that we have learned a lot. It is through UCB program, that project, that it was handling things like nutrition, positive parenting, and disability. When UCB program started, it started as a pilot program in our county, that is Kajiado County. Although it was not seen as that much big, UCB, it handled children between 0 to 3 years, whereby it is handling the first 1,000 years of a child, which are very important and very essential. It is through UCB that we learned that it is through better nutrition, through when a child, from conception to 3 years, when a child gets the best nutrition, through those 1,000 days, 0 to 3 years, will get the best children. It is through UCB we learned that children born with the PWDs, children living with disability, they are identified is during those years. During those early years of a child, it is when the nutrition is not taken care of, it is when the child gets standard growth. So through UCB program, it was a program which was began. It was a pilot program which was not narrowed. It not narrowed children from the rich families.
And let me ask you, Jacinta, to be specific, how has it impacted your family?
To my family?
Yes.
UCB program, me, myself, I'm a mother of a child living with disability. My child is an amputee. Is an amputee. It is during posting UCB program when I learned that children living with the disability, they are like any other children. It is through UCB program I learned that I can go to the hospital, the child being assessed. After assessment, I go to the social services, the offices of disability, and the children get the national card. Many families, many parents like me, I learned that many children are in the houses. Children living with disability are being locked inside houses because they don't know the importance that children living with disability, they are like another child. So it is through UCB I learned that all children, regardless of their background, being rich or being from poor background, the first years are very important. I learned that myself through UCB, that through positive parenting, when I grow with my child from the ground, I interact with that child, I play with that child, I will learn more about that child, regardless of the physical or appearance of that child, being physically disabled or like any other child.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I'll come back to you. I know there's more that you want to share on the same, but I think it's a good point to allow Harun Hassan to now weigh in. He's the Executive Director of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities. Of course, you can talk a little bit about how important UCB is to support families, bringing up children with disabilities, and of course, the state of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities in 2023. I can give an opportunity to proceed with that right now.
Wahiga, this particular program literally complements the government program on Inua Jamii for older persons, orphans and vulnerable children, and persons with severe disabilities. But before I go deeper into that, I think it is good to know the status of persons with disability in the country. There are about 1 million Kenyans who are persons with disabilities. This figure is contested because the 2019 census did not enumerate children under 5 years. That in itself shows that there is some discrepancy insofar as data of children are concerned. Persons with albinism were enumerated separately. And then of the questions that were used to administer to collect persons with disability, it's a very brilliant tool that will have ordinarily captured all forms of disability and give us the actual status of disabled persons in Kenya. But the questions that were administered, only 2 sets of it were analyzed, putting that figure at 1 million, a figure that is grossly, being contested by persons with disabilities across the country.
So plus 1 million.
Yes, slightly less than even 1 million. But disability, I think it is good to mention Wahiga here, in itself interacts with different factors that makes disability more pronounced. For example, how disability interacts with gender is much more different. The way each gender and disability interact. Women with disability, for example, are much more marginalized than men with disabilities or boys with disabilities, both women and girls. The cultures also interact with disabilities differently. You find some cultures, children even who have disability are literally being killed or are perceived as bad omen, as punishment. So the stereotype, surrounding it. So it impacts. And also age also matters. Children with disabilities, adults with disabilities, older persons with disabilities, themselves, in one way or another, because of that, age parity, there's a way, disability gets much more pronounced. So I think it is very important, first, for such program to, have maximum impact, we must have an accurate data for us. So as a government, we have embarked on the process of now collecting detailed socioeconomic information about persons with disabilities in this country. So starting sometimes early last year, we roll out new registration system. And this system entails having a detailed information about people with disabilities in Kenya. And this is part of Kenya's commitment with the UK during the Disability Summit. Do we have detailed aggregated data for purpose of planning, informing our policies, our programs, and then, that leads to also how we can really, make sure that the right people are being assessed and the right people are in our database. We guys, very well, disability has presented opportunity, and everybody wants to become a disabled these days. So if you don't have the right persons in our database, it means we will have people who are not necessarily, generally defined as people with disability, stealing from the government and the benefit that were not actually meant for them, like the affirmative consideration of tax exemption, importing duty-free car, access to business opportunity through AGBO. So we felt then we have to have a very, accurate system or accurate data, insofar as disability is concerned. And previously, to register persons with disability in this country, Wahiga, was a very painful process. People have to travel from across the country to follow up, the status of their registration at Afya House here. So we have worked closely with the government in the most recent time and decentralize, the process of registration to the county government. So the buck now stops with county directors of health across all the counties in the country. And we really thank the COG, the county government, for really working closely with us and other partners to make sure that, registrations now are fully devolved. And we want to now digitize even that service much more closer. Remember, the government has given an ultimatum by end of the June, most services need to be digitized.
That is
one
correct.
of the key one now is registration of persons with disability. So the system that we are rolling out, ultimately, the person with disability, who is in the rural areas, don't need to travel even to their county headquarters, but just having the relevant documentation. He can just access that by, uploading his documents, using his phone or the computer, wherever they are, and then, it comes to our headquarters for approval, then we print the card. And we're also at conversation with Huduma Secretariat and other stakeholders on how, all this data of Kenyans, the way it can be synchronized into one can be achieved. So the most important thing, such important program of safety net in nature or empowering, those who are much more vulnerable, we can get it correct if we have a proper data. And then how we can also learn from it and to improve on the existing program, which is now the Inua Jamii program. Okay, we'll dig a bit deeper into this, and I know Jacinta Mwende is on standby to talk a bit about this term, positive parenting. What does that look like? And I'll be coming to you shortly for that. But I want us to get a mic to Winnie Omwenga, just to also hear her narrative as well. Is she here with us? Winnie Omwenga, yes, let's get the microphone. She'll talk to us a little bit about how this UCB program has affected her personally and her family as well. Unaweza endelea tafadhali.
Kwa majina naitwa Winnie Mora.
Let's have the microphone as close to your mouth. Thank you, na ongea kwa sauti tafadhali.
Kwa majina naitwa Winnie Mora kutoka kaunti ya Kajiado. Ni mama wa watoto wawili. Mmoja ako na disability ya albinism. Before hii mradi ikuje, nilikuwa na challenges like ya kutoa huyu mtoto kwa nyumba. Singetoa huyu mtoto kwa nyumba sababu watu walikuwa wanaongea mingi. Sasa vile mradi ilikuja na registration ilikuwa kutoa huyu mtoto, nilipata advantage. Sababu nilipata mafunzo jinsi ya kulea huyu mtoto mwenye ako na albinism, jinsi ya kucheza na yeye ndiye ajiaccept ako kama wengine. Kutoka hapo sasa mtoto wangu alianza kujiaccept, nikaanza kumtoa, akaanza kuinteract na watu. Yes.
Ukiangalia siku za usoni, ungependa kuambia serikali na partners wenye wameleta imradi nini kuhusu hii UCB? Ungewaambia vipi?
Ningewaambia kuna wamama huko nje wako na watoto living with disability. Wenye wameficha watoto, hawataki kutoa watoto. Ningewaambia hii mradi iendelee, isaidie wamama wengine kama mimi wenye wako huko nje hawajulikani.
Okay, Winnie, asante sana na tutaendelea kuzungumza. But let me now bring in Jacinta Mwende, who's a Principal Social Development Officer, to also weigh in. I've used this term at least 4 times this evening, positive parenting. Please help Kenyans understand, what does that mean?
Thank you. I will begin by just giving a brief of where we are coming from as a State Department in developing the National Parenting Program that is delivering positive parenting skills. The State Department was able to do a survey back in 2019 in partnership with UNICEF and other stakeholders. And from that survey, it was very clear that violence against children it takes the lead in the homes. And sadly, parents and caregivers scored high in terms of perpetuating violence. And we know that from research that children who have been raised up violent, they are very likely to perpetrate the same when they grow up. So out of that, the State Department came up with a national prevention and response plan for 5 years, from 2019 to 2023. And one of the key strategic areas is family support and economic strengthening. And it is out of that within our mandate as a Directorate for Social Development, responsible for family promotion and protection, we came up in partnership with UNICEF and a multi-sectoral technical working group, developed the National Parenting Program that we are in the final stages. And this is the program we are delivering the positive parenting skills. Positive parenting skills speaks to, the interactions, the behaviors, the emotions, the attitudes around nurturing care, that are geared to empowering and are providing, recognition and guidance in raising children so that they can be able to realize their full potential. So that is positive parenting. And we are happy that very soon we'll be able to finalize and launch the National Parenting Program, and we'll call the larger stakeholders who have been very supportive so that we can come up with a roadmap, 5-year, to implement this. I will want to say, Wahiga, this is a program that is of top priority for the government of Kenya, so that we can raise up happy families and address issues like what Madam has said here of children who are being hidden because they have disabilities. As a Directorate for Social Development, we register community groups where they provide social support. And this is the place where we want these parents to come on board and caregivers and share their problems. Positive parenting has to do with active learning and active participation, adult learning actually. So parents and caregivers are able to share experiences and realize this is not your problem. It is, I also face the same and have been able to overcome. So we encourage Madam and the others to join these self-help groups. We already have a community group registration act that really provides the regulatory framework for registering and, managing these community self-help groups. Thank you.
Madam Jacinta, thank you so much for that. Let me jump quickly to Bwana Peter Ombasa, who's the Assistant Director at Children's Services. And you gave us a good intro in the beginning, explaining to us what UCB is and some of the stats. Talk to us about this particular program that we're here to talk about today, including the pilot and the possibilities for the full rollout. And you mentioned a conference. I want to hear a bit more about that as well.
Thank you. Your question is two-pronged, but allow me to start with the pilot UCB, then I can discuss briefly about the Social Protection Conference. The pilot UCB was a 1-year program, and the last payment was done in December 2022. And we started small, targeting 3 counties. The county of Kisumu has 2 locations, Kochogo and Kokola. The county of Kajiado has 2 locations also, Ildamat and Kajiado Central. And the county of Embu has 4 locations. Can't remember the names very well, but I know there's Gitumbiri, there's Riandu, and there's another 2 that are there. And as I said earlier on, this particular program looks at, it's a universal program. It's not targeted. It looks at all children below the age of 3 years and is per that location where they are. However, beneficiaries have the right to choose to be in the program or not, because you cannot force anybody who is not willing to be in the program, though the reward is money, which sometimes everybody will want to be there. But then the question you asked, how do we move post-pilot? Post-pilot is something that we're thinking together with partners who have been supporting us, Save the Children, UNICEF, WFP, and the rest. We've had tremendous discussion, but there's one thing that we are waiting for: the final impact of the program. Because you cannot roll out a program if you're not sure about the impact it has created from the beneficiaries, some of them who are here. And we are still documenting the impacts of the program, either through nutrition, either through positive parenting, either through, back to school, or economic empowerment for that matter. So once we clear with the impact, because the last payment was in December, we're now rolling out the study. After that, then we shall give the go-ahead. However, then we are still discussing with the partners to see whether we can have an extension for another 6 months. But this is a discussion we are still having, so that we can still continue with the same location that we are in, so that we are able then to continue with our colleagues, some of them who are in this house. But that is still under the carpet. As long as once we get the nod, we shall move on. But then all is never lost. Programs start, but they don't end. They still reincarnate and form a bigger program. Most of the programs in government started small. But right now, even in Nua Jamii started small with 500 beneficiaries. Now we are talking about 1,772,000. That's close to 1.1 million. So that is how we go as government. And remember, at the end of the tail end, most of the programs that we are running in government might be collapsed, for lack of a better word, might be collapsed because UCB will be universal. It's not a targeted program that will start saying that you're rich and the other one is poor. So that is the direction that we might move to, because universality is the way to go. Targeted programs have a lot of challenges, these exclusion errors, inclusion errors, among other things. Maybe you want me to talk about the Social Protection Conference?
And I don't know whether you brought it out clearly. How many counties are being touched by this program? Do you know how many beneficiaries per county?
Great.
Which ones, to be specific?
As I said, there are 3 counties.
Yes.
Embu, Kajiado, and Kisumu. The number of beneficiaries right now in the program is 8,324 as at now. And those are the ones that some of them are here, are the ones that they are our clients at the moment.
Okay.
So could I talk about the conference?
I can give you 1 minute before I come back to the audience.
Well, the Social Protection Conference is one of the knowledge sharing platforms that the State Department for Social Protection has in terms of making sure we understand where we have come from and where we want to go post where we are. And the last conference was held in 2018. The main objective of that conference was increased investment. There's a lot that has been done. But this one that is coming up, which is very robust, its main keyword is increased coverage. And that is why we are discussing with our colleagues here. We want to increase coverage in terms of social protection interventions in the country, in Kenya. In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Thank you so much for that. Let me get the mic now to Mark Ominde. Mark Ominde, can we get the microphone to him to talk about his experience with universal child benefits? Mark, you may proceed.
My name is Mark Ominde from Kisumu County, Nyando sub-location. This program, UCB, has helped me a lot. Through UCB, I learned a lesson to accept. I have 3 children, 2 of them have CP. Only 1 can walk, but the 2 cannot. Through acceptance, I learned that parents should accept the nature of the children. Parents should also not, children with disabilities have strength, and parents should focus on them rather than their disability.
Mark, they say that you can't really talk about an experience until you've gone through it personally. For you, I know you've talked to other parents who are bringing up children with disabilities. You've talked to other persons with disabilities. What are some of the lessons you've picked from this experience, and why it's important for programs like this to support families in Kenya going through various challenges?
The first lessons I learned is positive male involvement in parenting. Most men doesn't go with their parents, with their children. They ignore their children. More so, in my situation, if you have 2, the first 2 with the disability, like a youth like me, some leave those children with their mother. But me, I accepted them. Through my mom, helped me to accept them.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. That is Mark Ominde sharing his experience. And shortly, I'll be opening it up to questions. We'll pick some from the front, some from the center, and some from the back as well. But I want to give Harun Hassan, who's here with us. He is the Executive Director of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, to explain some of the measures that have been put in place to ensure disability inclusion for children, and also how some of the children that they've been working with have benefited from this program.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wahia. I think it's important to mention that disability lifestyle is a very expensive lifestyle. Whether you are a parent of children with disabilities, the stress you go through with that child, whether it is in rehabilitation, whether it is in access to education for that child, is a very expensive lifestyle. And different form of disability comes with different expenses. For example, my kind of disability, you require wheelchair, for example. And it's not a cheap thing. If someone is blind, they don't use a pen and a paper like you're using Wahiga. They use braille machine, some very expensive, white cane. Mention all disabilities, they have some expenses that comes with it. So then the government has come up with measures and programs to see to it that persons with disabilities are supported in one way or another. And that disability should be viewed not as an impairment of someone, but as a barriers that this person with different impairment interacts with in the society, that is making them not productive members in their communities. The barriers emanating from their nature of disability, the barriers emanating from the attitudes of the society and how they view, the person and even the parents of the children with disabilities. So I think such programs and many other programs are what government are trying to initiate to see to it that they can support in one way or another. One of the key things is, for example, for children, if I might put it in the context of our conversation, it's interventions like access to education, for example. The fighting chance for any child with disability is education. If you give them education, they become members of the society, productive, and their disability will be hidden. But if we deny them that, that is when their disability is glaring, become very visible. So what do the nature of the access to education look like? And what are the supports look like? For example, access, whether it is physical belt, environment, whether it is information for that child, whether it is affordability. Like the government of Kenya put a capitation per child with disability very higher than the other children, so that it can really complement the expense that comes with the child's disability. And as a council, we've rolled out scholarship program, for example, starting some 2 years ago, to see to it that we keep the children in the school, to maintain the retention, the transition, and the completion, to see to it that they can move to the next level without dropping out, and to read together with the disability of the child also, not to drop. Sometimes the child might get a scholarship, but because of the support that requires for that schooling, he might or she might drop out. Maybe they need a wheelchair and they have a scholarship. Maybe they need braille surfaces, maybe, or something like that, and they don't. Those are one of the things. And then for the parent, for example, parents with children with disability, they go through so much challenges in bringing those children up. So some of the support we give in education program, we coined a program called Wezesha Scholarship Program, targeting parents with disabilities and their children, particularly those parents, and how they survive. But children with disabilities are our core, activities in our education program and moving forward. And then the other issue is the issue of the cash transfer program. Something that this analysis of universal child benefit will going to help us to see to it that it can improve much more better. For example, when this program was coined, the figure or the amount is still the same 10 years ago down the line. And the inflations are there. And the expenses and lifestyles are becoming much more. Cost of living has
changed, absolutely.
Yes. How could this analysis and this report informs us that we have to improve, on that? How can we address the issue of taxation? Even not only for persons with disability, extending it to the parent of children with disability itself. Those are the conversations, ultimately we need to really pick up. And then the other most important thing that as a council we really support is the issue of rehabilitation and habilitation. Access to assistive devices. How could children afford accessible therapy services? Very recently, the government has supported a program called Autism and Developmental Disorders, or other related. We're at the initial stages designing the program. All these things, in one way or another, we look at the children particularly, and how those with severe disabilities, developmental disorders and autism spectrum at whatever level, how the unique challenges can be addressed. So there's a number of things, but the most important thing finally, Mr. Wahiga, that we have to say, as a country, we've done very well in the law, for example. The most important thing is, are you recognizing the law insofar as you are right as a person and you are right as someone with disability, as a child with disability is concerned. The Children Act that was passed last year put some focuses and breathed life into Article 53 of the Constitution of Kenya, for example, and also Article 54, which exclusively puts the right of persons with disabilities, and many other policies, including social protection policy, which is also under review, special need education policy. All these things looks at, insofar as disability, children and persons with disability are concerned, how could they access opportunities in this country going forward, so that they cannot be left behind, insofar as the development of the country is concerned.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Very comprehensive. Really brought some understanding to what's happening in regards to persons with disabilities, parents bringing up children with disabilities as well. And we're also still talking about positive parenting, which is why I want Jacinta to weigh in. I hope you're ready with your questions, because I'm coming to you for that as well. Jacinta, are there structures, are there plans the government has put in place to support frontline workers in delivering this positive parenting that you're telling us about? And overall government plans to strengthen the human resources required to support that?
Thank you. Yes, the government has structures in place. Through the Directorate of Social Development, we have social development officers across the 47 counties, and in all the sub-counties, sub-counties, the 290. And these are social development officers who implement the positive parenting program, that is the National Parenting Program, and they also work with, of course, jointly with the sub-county social development officers. All of us are officers from the State Department for Social Protection and Senior Citizens Affairs. We work together with the community structures, the lay volunteer counselors, who are supervised by the social development officers. And we also have the beneficiary welfare committee. These are beneficiaries of the cash transfer, government cash transfer programs, who are really very fundamental in the implementation of our programs, and also in positive parenting. Some of them, we have trained them as facilitators. We're also working with the child protection volunteers, another community structure, and our Directorate of Children's Services. And we're also partnering with Ministry of Health, where we have the health volunteer, the community health workers volunteers. So the structure is right at the grassroots to make sure that all parents and caregivers have been able to be reached with the positive parenting training that we have been undertaking. I would also want to say that there is a plan in place to actually, I would say it's continuous capacity building and training of the officers and the community structures that we are working with, because families are very unique, as we say in our program, and they're also we have various types of families. So this training and capacity building is a continuous process that we do, and we don't do alone. We do in collaboration with partners. At this point, I would really want to appreciate the ones who are already on board, like UNICEF. We also have World Vision. We have Lumos Foundation. We also have SOS Children Villages. They have partnered with our officers at the ground, one, to even pretest the draft national parenting manual in 15 counties. And we are also we have finalized piloting it actually in other 2 counties. So we really call our stakeholders so that we can be effective in terms of making sure these structures are sustainable, and that we continue implementing the positive parenting skills, because children will always be born and they have to be raised. And we say in our program, it takes a village to raise a child. So we need everyone on board to play their part. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, everyone needs to be on board to play their part. We've had some very good statements from our panelists here just to set the pace for this discussion. But let's get some questions and some comments from the audience. And I want to open it up for this particular moment. Just by a show of hands, those who are ready to give their comments. And okay, we can get the microphone. I think I'll start with that lady there, and then we'll move it around. We'll also keep a mic at the back to get some feedback from those at the back. Utajitambulisha tafadhali, and then you can give your question or comment.
I'm Zipora Nyambura. I'm a mother of 4, 2 girls and 2 boys. The boys are deaf. They are both deaf and dumb. So my worry or my concern ni ya kwamba hawa watoto we live in Dagoretti South. So my concern is tukiwa na hawa watoto wenye ni deaf, hatuna shule in Nairobi County. As big as Nairobi it is, we don't have a primary school for deaf. Kile tunafanya inabidi unatoa mtoto hapa unampeleka either Kiambu, Machakos, Thika. Na huyu mtoto ni mdogo sana. As much as he is vulnerable, bado kumpeleka mbali unaona ni challenge. What we have in Nairobi, we have units. Unit is whereby in a school munapewa one classroom. Hiyo classroom moja, from baby class mpaka class 8, they are all in the same classroom. Wanatumia the same blackboard, inagawanishwa. Kazi yao huwa inagawanishwa. So ukiuliza hiyo swali, kuna wakati niliuliza hiyo swali nikaambiwa, but we have schools. Nikaambia shule zenye ziko, they are units, they are not schools. We need at least one in Nairobi. Even if I'm in Dagoretti South, hata nikaambiwa shule imepatikana Embakasi, tumejengewa shule Embakasi, better off. Kuliko ati ninatoa mtoto Nairobi nampeleka mpaka Kiambu na ni mtoto mdogo, they are 10 and 11. Kutoa mtoto hapa nampeleka Kiambu ni mbali sana na ni mtoto mdogo.
Okay.
Afu in the same school tukijengewa shule, sisi kama wazazi pia tunaumia kwa sababu we are not deaf, hatujui kusign. So huyu mtoto sahi wanafanya CBC because wanasomea hizi regular schools. Tuko kwa CBC sahi, amekuja na homework. You don't know how to sign. Ukienda kuulizia shule, mahali unauliza ya mtu mzima ya kusoma ya sign language 20,000 per month. Unaona hautaweza. Na huyu mtoto unataka umsaidie CBC, it's all about your parent. Parent lazima akusaidie kwa hiyo homework.
Asante.
So inakuwa ni challenge.
Asante, very, very important questions. Now, I've been informed that we are due for a very short break, so let me not allow any more questions so that we don't miss them. Do you have anyone who wants to briefly comment on that before we take that quick break? Bwana Hassan, are you the best placed? Just yes. A brief comment, and then we take a break, we come back.
I don't know whether I've heard her clear. She was talking about the special needs education.
Yes, looking for primary schools closer to Nairobi for deaf.
Yes.
And also with CBC now requiring that parental involvement, it's a struggle for the family.
I think one of the things the government is trying to design in future going forward is a concept called inclusive education, where children, whether they have disability or no disability, school together. And the wisdom behind is to fight stigma and labeling. You find a school of maybe deaf there, na watu wanasema ile shule ya bubu, or ile shule ya watoto wako na mental psychosocial. To avoid that and to make children to grow together and to make them to accept together and to even advocate to their communities that disability is part of just diversity within us. Inclusive education is what we are really pushing forward. But for special cases like those with severe disability, how a unit can be created within the main school to require the attention of those kids. And that is what the special need education policy literally addresses insofar as education programs are concerned. But otherwise, I think the most important thing in the West, if you go, is about school for all.
School for all, that is the solution.
For example, one of the things that we have contributed to the task force that President constituted in informing the current CBC is how could all the teachers, whether they are primary school teachers, whether they are graduate teachers, will pass through KISE to have a diploma. Just the way if someone graduates from law school, he passed through KSL for that person to practice. So that they should have a diploma maybe from Kenya Institute of Special Education for them to be a teacher for all forms of disability. And and then when they go to the classroom, they already know sign language. They already know the concept around Braille, access, for the vision. Inclusivity is what we want to address in future. Okay. We have not yet taken off, but that is the plan.
Okay, and I'll give the others a chance later on if they want to say something on the same. But I'm told we are due for a break. Let's take a quick break. We come back. I can see many hands up. Want to get as many questions in as possible. Wherever you're watching us from, send us your questions. 22422 is the SMS line. And the hashtag is NEWSNIGHT. A very important discussion touching a large section of our society. And we need to continue interrogating these issues today. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break.